So, right, I've been huge into this new YouTube channel, right, that I gotta call out because I feel like I'm about to talk about it a lot, so I have to shout them out a little bit. But it's called Corridor Crew, okay? Basically, they're a bunch of special effects guys, and they've done special effects their whole entire life. So most of their channel is about looking at bad CGI and good CGI, and I've been on like a trend about it lately. But they brought up on the last point, they said, what makes bad CGI bad, okay? And he said, for example, a dragon. He said, no matter how well you make this dragon, you spend millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars into this dragon, it will never be great CGI, right? We'll always say that looks fake, okay? Why do you think that is?
Because dragons never existed.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like that's exactly correct. Like your brain knows it's not real, so it knows it has to be fake. So no matter how great they make it look, it always look bad. And so he brought up, for example, he goes, I'm going to name you a movie or show you a scene. And he showed a scene. Remember that old movie Panic Room? Old school. I think it's like 2002, 2001.
Oh, yeah, with the mother and daughter.
Yes, the mother and daughter have this fancy house, and they have a panic room that they eventually people go and they rob the house, and the mother and daughter pretty much spend the whole movie in a panic room. But anyways, that movie opens up with the camera panning from where they're sleeping at the top floor, and it pans down the stairs, and it shows the kitchen, and it kind of goes through a little coffee machine, and then it shows outside, and it shows the people. It's the one giant pan. Okay? They said, okay, watch this scene. Looks like just great camera movement, right? I said, no. 90% of this is CGI. Completely made on a computer. You don't think that because you know a lamp is real. You know a coffee machine is real. You know these stairs are real. So in your head, you see it as real. And he literally breaks it down. I guess he shows it behind the scenes where it's all green screen. Another one is, you know the Facebook movie?
Yeah.
The two twins that are in there?
Yeah.
They're not really twins. It's one of the guys who looks like the people you see and another completely random double. They took that first guy's face and they tweaked it a little bit and planted it on the second guy using pure CGI. So anytime you see those guys, they look exactly right. You're basically seeing the same guy twice. And again, it's something like you don't notice. I never noticed that in the movie. One more last example to use. In Iron Man 3, at the very end, when Iron Man's pretty much giving up all his suits, he's on the beach, he takes his like heart thing and he throws it off in the ocean. He gets in the car and he says, I am Iron Man. That complete scene didn't have Robert Downey Jr. because he broke his ankle. So they had to CGI him inside the scene. And again, we don't see it as fake because we know Robert Downey Jr. is real, right? And it just like blew me away at how much they actually use CGI in so many movies that we obviously never, ever noticed. John Wick was one of them, too. Apparently, in one scene, John Wick, his dog, like, boom booms in the lawn.
Yeah.
And there's boom boom there. That boom boom is CGI boom boom.
Yeah.
And
These CGI boom boom?
yes, because they said they needed the dog to boom boom there. They can't legally give it, like, laxative. So they were like, we can either go buy a prop, which everyone's like, why didn't you just buy a prop? Or apparently that boom boom cost $6,000 to make.
Oh, my
CGI.
gosh.
Yes, the big CGI. But it just, like, blew me away because I never thought because you always do pick out like bad CGI. You're like, oh my god, this CGI was so bad. But there's so much in movies that apparently is CGI that you just don't think of.
You know, that kind of makes sense what you're saying about, like we know a dragon's not real, so we know it's CGI. We didn't know about the twins, so like Facebook, he wasn't a known actor at the time. Now he's kind of getting big on the Oscar scene, but we didn't know he was a twin at the time. So it's perfectly okay for us to think like, oh yeah, those two are twins. No, one of them has a fake face on CGI. I think about Fast and Furious. What was it, 7? Recently,
Paul Walker.
Paul Walker just died, and we heard like, hey, his brother is going to take some scenes. I remember someone telling me, I think that was you. So his brother was covering those scenes. So whenever we saw, there were certain times put in the movies where like, that's his brother. We could definitely tell because why? We knew what was going
ahead
on.
of time.
We knew ahead of time. So that makes sense. But CGI and boo-boo? Oh my gosh. Is that $6,000 worth it? I guess the John Wick it is because they made it back in the box office. They made it back.
There was another movie, and I've never seen the movie. I just was reading about it. It was with Tobey Maguire, right? That's the guy who plays Spider-Man, right? Apparently they wanted him to shave his head, but in his contract, he charged like $20,000 extra to shave his head. Okay, so they went in and CGI'd because they needed him to have a mullet. so they need him to shave his head and then wear a wig. Well, so they just apparently CGI'd his hair, right? And in the article I'm reading it, they're like, and then shows the scene, and they're like, was it really worth it? Like, you probably spent like thousands of dollars creating this CGI hair throughout the whole entire movie, rather than just paying the guy $20,000 to shave his hair off. So it is weird, like as a director, when you would think when CGI is necessary and when like
knowing the fact that you
practical
could do it, but is it worth doing it?
yeah.
And it's kind of weird. I remember there was another movie too where the person was laying down. Was it? Oh, it was Blade. Remember the Blade movies?
trilogy.
Wesley Snipes. No, but he was laying down on when like he was dead, and they put him in the emergency room and stuff like that, and they're doing operation stuff. He's laying down, and he wakes up, and then he starts like killing everybody. I think it was the first one
I
actually.
think so, yeah.
And I was back in the day when I used to watch DVDs. I would love watching the dubbed version where like directors talk about it, which is another subject, which is crazy. But in that scene, this guy was like, "Yeah, we couldn't get Wesley to open his eyes up. Like this is not him with his eyes open. He would not open his eyes for like some reason. So he's like, so we just CGI'd it like that." Not his eyes. See, like
That's crazy.
I was like, "What?" So I kept watching it over and over. And after a while, after you watch it, you're like, "Oh crap, it is CGI."
Yeah.
Like you can tell. But like just in the heat of the moment when you're watching it, and they're like, "Yeah, he didn't want to open his eyes, so we just CGI'd them." And I was like, "What?" Yeah, it's very interesting.
I wonder how it is as an actor to work with CGI, and you're acting, and what we see as an audience, we see something just like wonderful, or just simply simply as like a house right behind them, and they're just acting. They have to do such a great job to convince us. Well, that's there. That house is behind me. It's not, but it's behind me. Like, how hard
Just
do you
like
think that would
all
be?
of the Avenger movies?
Yeah, all of them, like all of them.
Do you think, because like the Avengers movies, they at least know what they're looking. Do you think like in some ways, like let's say Avatar, right? Do you think they knew what they looked like?
I think they might have like storyboarded it.
Oh, right.
Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. Storyboarded the whole movie, and they're like, "This is how you look like." But it is tough. It's crazy. Because literally all of it's CGI. Like you're an actor playing this huge, tall creature, and
With this like beautiful scenery around you, and literally it's just you in a jumpsuit with a bunch of like green stuff everywhere.
And you just have like these dots on your face, and they're just
and like that camera that like sits on top of them, like looking at their face that the whole time. Yeah,
They talked about that too, with motion tracking. You remember that movie? It was with the robot, and it was called Chappie. Yeah. They said that was one of the movies that just refused to use motion tracking for some reason. So the actor that did it, the special effects guys literally went in there
frame by
frame, and put that robot everywhere that actor was. So you basically have to remove the actor from the scene visually and implant that robot in there. Rather than motion tracking today, you put all those dots on there because essentially you're just putting that creature on top of that character that's already
Masking
in there.
it.
But like, they talked about that, and just imagine that that's your job. You would spend hours and hours and hours and hours to create this 2-minute scene probably, and that's what you did in the majority of the movie. Crazy. Another thing they talked about was lighting, and that blew me away too. They took, remember the old Scorpion King, or actually technically it was the Mummy. And it was the Mummy 2, and The Rock comes out as Scorpion King at the very end, and like he's an actual scorpion, remember? Yeah. And they went in, they quote unquote like try to fix it, and they literally just fixed lighting at first, right? And they said lighting is one of the biggest things about CGI, because apparently what bad directors do is the special effects guys will create this monster, right? And they try to make it the best they can, and then they show it to the director, and the director's like, light it up, I want to see more of the monster. And again, in our heads, we don't think about it, but we know how light reflects. For example, like the sun right now hitting Jesus' left side of his face. His left side of his face is lit up. His right side of his face is darker. We don't think that that's a thing, but our brains have seen that for 26 years, that it can notice that in a movie and depicts it. That's another reason why the CGI looks bad. Literally just because of lighting of something that we don't think about every single day.
Yeah, and I know the guys you're talking about. It's so crazy because they point stuff out, and you're like, oh my gosh. You're like, see, look at this light, and it refracts different. This material reflects like different than this material, and it's so crazy.
But the movie goes by so fast that I think audience don't really recognize that until you're actually like going. I think if you're going like a frame by frame.
Well, it's not even that, because if you watch that Scorpion King, it is a horribly CGI movie. But we see it as just bad CGI. Because I've seen movies, obviously, that are just, bad CGI. You're like, man, this CGI is bad. Now, granted, we can't sit down. Before I started watching these, been able to decipher what's making it bad. But it is crazy seeing them go in and change these small things, and you're like, oh my god, like it looks so much better. And it's crazy how your brain works like that. Like, your brain, without even you really consciously thinking, okay, it's the lighting, it's this, no, your brain just like looks at it and says, nope, something's wrong with that there. It's crazy how powerful our brains are.
Do they ever say how long it takes to do CGI?
It just depends really on the scene, because sometimes, for example, that Chappie movie, they said like again, like it would probably take one person for a 2-minute scene. He'd probably be working on it for months, right? So you got to think like the Sonic movie that's coming out, like how mad those people who did the special effects have to be, because they worked on this probably for years, and now they're like, hey, we're gonna release it in a year. So now you got to go back and fix all the work that you did to try to make it better. So yeah, because you're going frame by frame by frame by frame.
Gosh,
I'm still surprised that they decided to just redo it.
Yeah.
That's probably the only movie that people hated before it came out, and they're like, "Oh, well, let's fix it."
Yeah.
Like, they just showed 1 or 2 trailers tops, and they were like, "Nope, we're fixing it."
Honestly, like I think people are gonna see it, but I don't think it's gonna be like a box office hit.
Right.
So I don't know why people are like, oh my gosh, he looks so ugly. Look at his teeth and all that stuff. Like, good golly, Miss Molly, wasn't this like? Doesn't it have to be approved first? Like here's the design. It's like, okay, all right, it's good. Go ahead.
Well, the thing that they were going for is that they were going for a more realistic Sonic.
Yeah.
And again, that goes by our brains. They were trying to go for, like, let's make what an actual hedgehog would look like if it was blue and super fast. But we didn't want to see that. We wanted to see the cartoon. Like, we wanted to see the cartoon guy, but in real life form. So they were kind of flirting with the line. Kind of like Lion King. One of the biggest things against Lion King was that it's not animated enough because they look like real animals. Where people are like, what do you think real animals look like? Like, that's actually what a hedgehog... I mean, that's actually what is Pumbaa? A warthog. That's actually what a warthog looks like in real life. They're not cute and cuddly. Like, and I think that's what brings back the Sonic thing. Is they were trying to make it realistic, but everyone's like, that looks nothing like what we picture Sonic to look like.
I feel bad for those guys. They had to take another year to redesign this guy.
Yeah. No, that would suck.
Like, they're working night and day probably right now, redoing everything. It's crazy.
Another thing that they bring up is like imperfections. Like on the Iron Man suit, they'll zoom in to specific parts, and you'll see like scratches or fingerprints or smudges.
And they're like, my gosh.
Yeah, and like they say that that's another thing. Like we see it and we don't think about it. We're like, oh, you see that smudge on his left shoulder? No, we see it, and our brain knows that that's normal, because obviously if you built like a car, it's not gonna be smudge free. So putting those imperfections in movies like adds so much more to the element. So as always,
Stay fresh.
stay hungry
Stay driven.
and stay humble.